Welcome to episode 2 of Stew Street. I am here with Gordon Gilkes. Gordon is the founder of DanceSport Confidence and President of DanceSport Australia. Gordon is also the President of DMC Markets, a holding and investment company specializing in breakthrough applications and DeFi, media, and education. Gordon's work currently consists of M&A across the tech sectors of digital media, and he's also done extensive work with platforms in tokenized assets and digital securities, as well as even hologram technology, AR, VR, modern Metaverse platforms, renewable energies, education, and venture capital. Overall, just a plethora of experience.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. Thank you, Sam.
Welcome to the podcast, Gordon. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be interviewed.
You obviously have accomplished a great deal thus far in your career. The few things I've read off speaks volumes about who you are as a person, and you show no signs of slowing down. You're beginning to tailor your skill set towards the 21st century and the modern needs of media and tech in all of our world's fields. I'm interested in breaking down the current state of all those various fields, but first I'd like to understand a little bit of your background more, starting with your early career and what really got you into this profession. So my first question is, what pushed you into early entrepreneurship, and when did you know you wanted to be involved in the education field?
Sure. Look, I think as an entrepreneur, it started when I was about 15 years old. I was always interested in different ways to make a dollar, basically, and would start all kinds of little projects, whether it was working within my dad's shop or whether I was, selling oranges or making fishing rods, all kinds of things. I've always been very interested in working for myself.
Yeah, and you actually told me a little bit before we got on camera about your work in your dad's grain shop and how kind of you developed those skills early on to be a seller. So what kind of pushed you into merging your skills of being an entrepreneur, being a seller, being just inspired in that sort of way with kind of traditional education?
Look, essentially it comes back down to fulfilling a need. So anyone who is selling is filling a need in the person buying. And it's got to be remembered that it doesn't matter, how good your product is or how good a salesman you are. If you don't fill that need, you're never going to sell. So the need that was in traditional education, is around the space of well-being. Traditional education focused on maths, English, STEM, sciences, but essentially the biggest problem that was going on was children's ability to communicate with each other, their ability to develop their resilience, develop their confidence. And we just got lucky. We staggered across this process where teaching them to dance with a partner, they actually started to grow and develop, and their interaction started to change. The culture within the class and the culture within the school started to change. And we took it from an original seeding program of 180 students to over 10,000 students a year. And it was because we focused on the problem. The problem and the need in schools was well-being and that human growth of skills, of soft skills.
Did you have that long-term outlook from the jump where you saw yourself bringing this to now a 16-year venture, or did you kind of just focus on the now and the challenges at hand when starting your business?
Now and challenges at the time. We had no idea what it could grow into, and it actually morphed and developed as the opportunity presented itself. Essentially, we thought we were teaching dancing, and it was just a gig that we thought it might last a couple of years. And surprising to us is the school principals actually rang us and said, "Look, can you come back and do it again?" And they didn't even know what was happening, but they just noticed there was a change, there was a shift. And as we worked with those educators, we worked out what was going on, and we focused on that, and the rest is history. So yes, 16 years and still going really strong. I think it will keep going.
And were those motives, did those change as you moved, where originally you thought, okay, this is a dance program, is going to bring a little bit of stress away from kids, benefit them in a way that school might not. So then a shift in, oh, this builds skills in genuine things outside of just dancing that are so important for kids to develop at an early age. When did that transition happen?
Look, probably 2015, we really recognised the impact of social skills, and it was becoming more and more prevalent. In fact, worldwide now, what they call well-being or the ability to socialise is now the number one importance in all schools worldwide.
Yeah.
And there's a big shift. You talk about the shifts. The biggest shift for me was to actually see the change in individuals. And there are many, many stories of seeing human development in a 9 or 10-year-old boy or girl where life may have seemed quite hopeless for them, but then they get good at dancing. I mean, you think so what? But it's actually the soft skill of being able to just do something that they couldn't do before, or develop some confidence. So, for example, there's one boy from a Middle Eastern family. He was a refugee from Syria, and he's just a very quiet, shy kid. He's witnessed horrors from where he'd come from, and he was a hopeless dancer, but he really just gave it his best shot. And I kept encouraging him and kept saying, look, just keep trying. And it finished up. He made it into a semi-final into an event.
Oh, wow.
And that changed his life. I'm telling you now, that changed his life. All of a sudden, he had confidence. He was a part of the community. He was a star in his school. And the next thing I knew, he was communicating to the Islamic community in Arabic about life in public schools in Australia. And he became a conduit for that whole community, a 10-year-old boy, to engage that estate.
Yeah, it's impressive about you go in with one mentality about, okay, let's help this kid on a micro scale, and it's kind of a domino effect of what people can do, what intrinsic values can bring out in a person. And I just want to talk about a little bit. Danceport claims to embody 3 ways for children to grow, and I think that student in particular is emblematic of all 3 of these. The cultivation of friendship, emotional control and interaction skills, and thirdly, achievement.
Correct.
Can you speak to each one of these facets a little bit, how their importance to children as well as people as a whole in their development?
Absolutely. Look, there's the study that I did at the time indicated there was 3 core motivations. Affiliation, the ability to make friends, the desire to want to be liked. So there are people who it's their strongest motivation. They do things. You'll see it in Olympians. You'll see it in athletes, in business, in every sphere. They just like to be liked, and they work night and day to achieve it. Other people, it's control, being in control of the situation, being in control of their finances, their career, whatever. And the third one is achievement. Now, a control person won't get affiliation. They won't understand it. And affiliation won't understand achievement. But if you identify with one of those 3 core motivations, you hit the bell. That person then suddenly is engaged, and they find that's their way to grow.
And what do you believe the best way is to not only personally figure out maybe what type of person you are, but how did you bring that out of students?
Basically through values. And again, there's values that we should adopt, and there's values that really drive us. So the values we should adopt. Of course, we all should be nice. We all should be caring and thoughtful, and half the time we're not. And confident and resilient. We'll call those ancillary values. But underneath them, there is a core value in every single person. And you actually drill down to find that core value. and it's a surprise. It's usually driven by something that's lacking in your childhood. But if you look for it, it's woven through every single thing that you do.
Yeah.
And in each child, we would look for that. Every opportunity, we look for what is their core value, what is their core driver that resonates. So, give you an example. It's in their dialogue, the words that they use. It might be hope. It might be significance. It might be trust. It could be, friendship. Whatever that word is or that value is, if you speak in that paradigm to that person, you have their full attention. So that's what we try to work through.
I think that's something important for people to understand, the listeners at home. Communication is, as you even told me, many studies agree, is the number one employable skill. Being able to speak to a person in their language and their type of personality, as you talked about, is imperative to being able to not only understand someone's side of the story, but to truly be productive. Given your plethora of experiences, can you describe from those experiences how communication skills can benefit people in all sectors?
Absolutely. I'll give you a great example. I went to a seminar on a piece of software. It was like a client management software.
Yeah.
The two CEO, the CEO and the founder came out, a couple of young guys with backpack and hoodies on, and they got on the microphone. I didn't understand a word they said. Then this young guy, Indian guy, comes on the microphone straight after, and he talked about the application of the software to our companies. I understood everything he said.
Yeah.
And everything he said resonated because he made a complex software easy to understand and digest.
Yeah.
So it's the ability. It's not just communication. It's the ability to make complex problems digestible and to make pathways for people to understand easier. That is the employable skill.
It's interesting because there's this large debate, especially as we talk about the tech world a little bit, about on a macro level, someone like Steve Jobs. What's the true importance of a person like that? And most of the magic happens on the tech side. But the true value in that is being able to transmit that knowledge to the consumer, to the audience member, whoever it is, in a way that does justice to the product, but at the same time is able to make it digestible. And as you move into a field such as tech, media, and finance, something that's some people may say is vastly different than education, those skills are definitely transferable. What was the learning curve like moving into that world?
Into the tech world?
Yeah.
Again, I didn't understand a word they were saying because I came from an education background, and all the acronyms, tech and finance, as you know, are full of acronyms, and you simply spend half your time Googling, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And once you start getting hold of the language, it starts to make more sense. And I think there are incredible technicians in each field, in each sphere, and that's their lane. They're really good at it. How I engaged in it was actually trying to weave these guys together to say, well, I sort of got what you're talking about, but you don't understand the application of education or the application of media within your software. So I'm going to give you a pathway to open your eyes through different perspectives of how that application could work for you. So I suppose that was my point of engagement. I used the skills that I brought with me, and I'll never be a technician. I'll never be able to work through the algorithms to do blockchain, but I can understand what blockchain is, and I can describe it in a way that others can understand it.
And a large part of this transition came over a weird time in everyone's lives, which was the COVID-19 crisis, the pandemic, that's still lingering around to this day. moving back kind of towards DanceSport, what challenges did you face at the front end of this, and how did these new technologies kind of assist you in this process, or maybe put it at a detriment?
Oh, sure. Look, I think the pandemic, you have to look at the good things that came from it, and the acceleration of technology was exponential. It took us 5 years. We expanded 5 years in one. People's adoption of online purchases, adoption of online courses. Zoom has become like a spoonerism now. It's not just a product.
Yeah.
When the pandemic started, I hadn't even heard of Zoom, but now we live on it.
Yeah.
And it has become quite a resource for all companies. But I think the application of technology in education, we used it because of the lockdowns. We actually reapplied some of the technology to do online competitions.
Yeah.
So a learning platform, which is off a website, it's called LearnDash. We simply rebadged it and turned it into a competition amongst the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to learn, as soon as you have, we had over 700 entrants, by the way. 700 videos just clogged up the website.
Yeah.
And no one could look at anything because it was so slow. So we had to build another website. We had to buy a server. And the other website housed all these individual videos so that it was seamless. So the learning curve was up. For us was, how do we provide this competition that seems in live time, but was actually really engineered by lots and lots of software in the background.
And the value persisted throughout, as you said you had 700 people upload.
Correct.
So the customer base is still there, and it speaks to the fact that if they see value, they'll see value in most circumstances. So I'm guessing that might have alleviated the stress of how you might go about your business moving forward. But as we kind of pull away from the pandemic, what aspects of your COVID style business are you keeping for the future?
Learning platforms. I think the biggest thing we need to keep in mind is the face-to-face communication can never be replaced.
Yeah.
It is so crucial. You can read another person, all the nuances of that communication helps you build the relationship. I don't think you can build relationships on Zoom. I think you can maintain them, but you can't really build them. And certainly it's hard to start them because it's very two-dimensional. There's only so much you can see. But there is a definite hunger for learning online. There's so much free content out there, but there's not much coordinated low-cost content. So people who want to do a 10-week course, low cost, it might be $100 or something like that to do a course. That to me is the biggest emerging market in education.
Mm-hmm.
The next tier up would be doing a formalized course, which with either a government recognition or diploma level, and then up it goes to tertiary. But it's that bottom end that is so interesting for people. It's very easy to engage.
Yeah, and things such as Coursera, spaces that you guys are moving into. What do you see the future of DanceSport being? Are you moving past just younger children and the school levels? Are you moving towards adult education content as well, or what do you see as the future?
So, the future of DanceSport is actually emerging now. This morning I had an email from Uganda, people who they have 20 schools doing dance now. They're looking at making it mandatory because dance is low cost. They don't need a football field. They can do it in the school grounds or in the classroom. All they need is music and a video.
Yeah.
So our engagement now is online learning. We are teaching either educators in Uganda or dancers to teach children. Immediately, it's grown exponentially. 26 schools immediately. The government is looking at making it mandatory mandatory. So across every school in that country will be doing Danceport.
Wow.
How powerful is that?
Yeah.
And it's all because of they have seen our online presence. They feel the resonance of values. It's not about costumes or dancing itself. They can see this is growing and developing human achievement and human development. So that's what they are wanting to buy.
So you found kind of the merger between the benefits of the digital world and the applications to in-person learning.
Correct.
And that's such a big jump, just progress-wise. And one of the huge benefits we've gotten from, I don't want to say good things that came out of the pandemic, but some beneficial things that we've learned. Some CEOs, such as Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, believe that people should be able to work from wherever they want and work remotely. He's a big proponent of that, which makes sense because Airbnb, rentals of apartments in different locations, kind of promoting its own business. While other CEOs like Elon Musk are making it mandatory to work in person and in-person contact. And do you believe that that should be a necessity, or is it dependent on the business?
Having worked as an entrepreneur and also in a company, there is a significant importance of being able to build a team face to face. You can't replicate that through Zoom. You actually need to be able to build that relationship. You go to lunch together. You might sit and chat over a coffee, and your engagement is full.
Yeah. And
there's also, I think, what's underestimated is the synergy of people sitting together and thinking together. So brainstorming ideas, the concept that 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 or whatever. That is alive and well as long as you give people that opportunity to be amongst each other and to build those relationships.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was a major component of Dancesport's success over the past 16 years, is that synergy and that chemistry between the team and how it's built over the years. If you were to pinpoint kind of a few things that you believe were kind of the ingredients for success, where you could grow it from a smaller dance company to what it is now, what are those ingredients?
First would be cash flow. As soon as you run out of cash, you have no business. It's all over. No matter how clever you are, how good your software is, or your team, you run out of money, it's all over.
Yeah.
So being very prudent, managing that cash flow. We ran out of money many times, and I can tell you from experience, it's very bleak when that happens. That would be understanding your cash flow, understanding your growth and your team are like a seesaw. You go out, you sell more businesses or more business, up goes your revenue, but then you also have to upskill and upsize your team. So you're constantly seesawing up. You can't just load up all the business and then not deliver, because then your reputation's shot. So those two would be the key themes.
And going back to the idea of a learning curve, I'm guessing early on those are skills that you still needed to develop. How quickly did it take you to feel comfortable in kind of that managerial standpoint over a company?
That's actually a great question, because the biggest leap for any entrepreneur is to go from being the sole trader to being the manager. And what that means is, as a sole trader, you in Danceport, you do the accounts, you'd sell product, you deliver the classes, you were everything.
Yeah.
And then you maybe employ one person, but you still have the mindset, well, they'd never know as much as me because I'm just marvelous at it, because I started this. And you can get trapped right there. Most small businesses are actually trapped in that thinking that they are the company. As soon as you start letting go of the different components and trusting the people that work for you, you can grow.
Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest things to do, is to say, employ a teacher. Turns out they're actually a much better teacher than you were in the first place.
Yeah.
Then you employ an accountant or a bookkeeper who was much better at bookkeeping. So the goal was to actually replace yourself everywhere with people who are better at that skill than you are.
Yeah.
And it's, you'd think it'd be depressing, but it's actually quite liberating that when you realise you're surrounded by smart people, then you can focus on what you're good at.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. It's strategic scaling. It's being able to find people's specialties and deploying those in a way that makes sense not only to you but to the company. You also seem to involve yourself in fields that inspire you in some way, or you see kind of growth possibilities for humans. What interests you about now Web 3.0, this field you're entering, in digital media? What do you believe that means for society?
Web 3.0 is the future. It's well recognised and well documented that it's the third iteration of the internet. At the moment, it still feels a little two-dimensional at times. The avatars are quite a little bit robotic and a little bit, they're not feeling realistic yet. But I think over the next few years, it's going to develop dramatically, where you can have a high-quality avatar as you enter these virtual spaces. I highly recommend anyone who hasn't had a VR set, doesn't own a VR set or use one, go out and borrow one, give it a try, go onto these virtual circuits and have a look, because it's a whole world that is absolutely astounding.
And what do you see the concentration of this industry being, where when people think of VR, AR, all this type of stuff, they think of Meta, think of Facebook, or maybe even what Apple might do in the future. Do you think there's space for a diverse amount of companies, or do you think it's going to be highly concentrated over a few?
No, I think it's going to be diverse. I think it's going to be more like a free development of resources, like Wikipedia. Everyone's suddenly an expert and they can contribute to like crowdsourcing. And I think the metaverse is going to be so big that it is completely uncontainable. A few companies may want to control it, but it's not going to happen. Maybe it will take a little while, but there are so many smart people out there wanting to communicate, participate, and they will find out their own pathway. There's already so many different metaverse cities and locations, and the conversations I'm having, it just staggers me how fast this is growing. Yeah, and a lot of people really just started hearing the term metaverse and this type of thing over the past few years, whether it be on a household basis. Yeah.
It seems like this might be something that's 5 or 10 years down the line, but actually might come quicker than that. When do you see widespread use amongst normal consumers? Do you think this is something that's cost effective for everyday, maybe high schoolers or households to use, or is it going to be kind of a high-end luxury?
Oh, it's not high-end luxury at all. How much does a mobile phone cost? $300-500. A VR set is around the same price. And I think the evolution is actually going to be in the VR sets themselves. I know Apple were looking at a pair of glasses, which was to be, they're in their second iteration of it now. I think that's actually going to be the future, where you're walking down the street, you're wearing these glasses, and a little screen pops up and says, Sam, your name comes up and how you know you, and all kinds of data feeds going to happen through this opportunity. I think the technology will be there faster. The uptake will actually depend on the way it's sold and people's engagement. At the moment, it's very much a technology. It's a purvey of all the technologists. All the people in the tech world, they understand it, they're into it, they know the jargon, and it hasn't really made it to mainstream yet.
Yeah.
I think the message has to change in how these applications can actually benefit high school students dramatically, for example.
You seem to take a positive outlook on what it could mean for the future. A lot lot of people are hesitant towards this sort of technology because they feel like it'll pull people away from human interaction. With your background in dance sport and with things where you're a big proponent of that human interaction, where does the kind of positive outlook for this application come from? And are you hesitant at all about what it could be?
Look, there's a development of something called digital justice, which is a new term for me, but essentially it's the global governance of the effect of the internet and the emerging 3.0. And I think as it grows, the need for more governance is going to be there, and it will come into it, especially in decentralized finance and blockchain. And yes, we're seeing the roller coaster there with cryptocurrencies. But the vehicles that we've had in the past, history tells me that old televisions became flat screens, and everyone thought they were going to be glued to flat screens for 10 hours a day, and it didn't happen. It was just a tool. Mobile phones, we've gone through an iteration where people were glued to their mobile phones, and we're sort of emerging away from that. It's actually unpopular to have someone who's constantly glued to the phone and they're being told to engage again, take time away from it. So it's a tool that is perhaps overused initially, but then is brought back under control.
Okay, so you think there's going to be kind of a rebalancing effect once this really catches on?
Correct. I think there will be control and balance. I think initially it will be overwhelmingly exciting to be on the 3.0 and looking at all these new Metaverse and I don't know what's a plural of Metaverse. Metaverses is I think it's Metaverse, but I think it will rebalance.
And okay, I feel like that's definitely still a positive outlook on the whole idea, and I like that perspective because you take a middle path towards it in a way where you understand that there could be negative connotations, but in the end, the positive will outweigh the negative, and that's why it'll be an application for the future, just like cell phones are.
Correct.
Moving on to kind of what you've learned from all your years thus far, and being an entrepreneur, a student of many industries, and someone that always seeks improvement. How have you learned to balance work with your personal life, with your family, with your interests outside of work? And how has your idea of work-life balance kind of evolved over your career?
It has evolved enormously. I think that my day starts usually at 4 in the morning. Yep. I'll meditate, have a coffee, go to the gym. I used to read a lot. I used to read at least an hour a day every morning. And that early time between 4 and 7 was sacred time for me because it was my time. And then the family would wake up and I would go. The only way I could really get achievement that I wanted to go in my career was to focus only on my career and my family. I found I just didn't have time to do hobbies. I didn't have time to take up other interests except that early morning time, which was the gym, reading, meditation. That to me was a balancing act. It's very difficult, especially with young families, as life just gets so fast, and things that you used to enjoy as far as maybe going out with your friends or going out, things that going to the pub or doing whatever, they have to fall to the wayside, and you have to make decisions and sacrifices.
I'm glad to hear that even as your kind of life changed over the years, you took those moments, whether it be through reading, through meditating, through working out, to kind of stay in the moment. And that's very important for reflection. I feel like a lot of students, especially in college, feel like everything's moving 1,000 miles per hour and so career oriented that they don't even take that maybe 1 hour, whether it be a day or a week, just to sit in where they are and reflect. So I'm glad to hear that. That's a very healthy mindset about it all.
Another thing I do is in that time is I do a lot of journaling. So I've got journals going back since 2007, and they're private thoughts, challenges, fears, inspirations, all these things, all documented over time. And for me, it's important for anyone else to read them, but for me, reading them, I find it very comforting to see the journey itself, to see, well, that was a really dark dip, but look what happened after it. And you can start to see life's tapestry. And, without the challenges, it can't be all sunshine. It's got to be a contrast of difficulty and fantastic achievement. That's where you get the contrast in life and get the true tapestry of the whole picture.
And it's what makes those great moments great.
Absolutely.
Hypothetically, if you were looking for a job and you had to isolate one aspect of that job that intrigues you the most, and you've had a lot of these moments throughout your career where you're truly passionate about something, whether it be flexibility hours, maybe salary, business mission, personal interest alignment, enjoyable coworkers, whatever it may be, what would that aspect be that intrigues you about a job the most? And has that changed over your career?
Certainly. The aspect would be exposure to opportunity. Opportunity in things that I don't understand, never been in before, and that are challenges. But you get the chance to play. So if you imagine you're playing soccer or football, you're on the field the entire game. You get the opportunity to grow all of those skills. If you are in a lane, a very narrow bandwidth of participation, you're not going to grow. So for me, the opportunity to really expand my knowledge and experience different things, that would be the number one. Look, in the past, it would have been either, depending on what I was focused on at the time, it might have been the money, it might have been the team. But I think as you age, your maturity brings a wisdom that is irreplaceable, and it can't happen until you actually experience so many things. And the wisdom gives you that perspective.
I think that's a great answer, and it's kind of putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations and getting comfortable at them. It's where true growth occurs. You've already done so much over the span of your career, and being able to narrow down on kind of a few key things in that reflection is so key. Given that, if you were to go back and give yourself one piece of advice as a 20-year-old, what would that be?
Whatever you think you can achieve, it's far more than you ever could possibly imagine. If you think, I'd like to have this position, or this kind of life, or this money, it's actually, you can achieve it easily. You've got challenges all the way through, but your scope of ability and scope of what you can accomplish will stagger you as you get older. I've gone much further than I ever imagined. Experiences I couldn't have imagined at 20 years old. At 20, I made a very good living selling raincoats to farmers in the country. And it seemed like a bizarre kind of way to earn a living because firstly, there was a drought. So I'm selling raincoats in a drought. And farmers are not known to be very positive in the first place. So they're all quite negative about everything. And I would be in a van, I'd travel around the Victorian countryside, and I'd go and maybe see 30 or 40 farms a day. Wow. And of those 30 or 40, 90% of them were no. Right? 10% maybe were a yes. And so I developed a resilience at 20 years old.
Yeah.
And then I learned to read people really quickly. As you're going into a driveway, I could tell you what kind of people they are, how well kept the farm was, how well fed the animals are, the state of repair of the fences. You go to the door, you can see immediately what is important to these people. how things are arranged. Are there any artwork on the walls? Are there any, just look around, be observant. And then the person themselves, you had maybe 2 seconds to gain their trust. That's it. How do you do that? And that because of the thousands of failures I went through, I was able to hone the ability to read people quickly and to develop that skill.
Yeah.
And sure, the equation went from 90% no's to probably 40, 50% no's. I made a lot of money as a 20-year-old selling raincoats. Wow. I bought my first house at 20. So, it was probably the best experience of my life of challenges.
Yeah, that's immense. And being able to transfer those skills into any industry after that, you must be so much more comfortable. A lot of students, especially nowadays, don't know how to start those conversations with people or network or even try to sell themselves. You learn that through experience.
Yeah.
Do you think there's kind of a tip you can give for someone about how to catch someone's attention, or do you think that's something people have to learn for themselves?
Oh, there's some good tips. First thing is listen. Eye contact. Listen to what they're saying. Read their body language. Are they uncomfortable? If they're uncomfortable, take a step back. Give them space. Ask them something about themselves and listen to the answer. And then if they're uncomfortable talking about themselves, what's around them? Any sort of point of interest that opens up their ability to communicate. So people are interested in what affects them. And if you can tap into that is a great starting point. If you go in and try and sell them a product or yourself, it's much harder, but it's much easier to sell your interest in another person. So that would be probably the number one tip.
So it's going back to speaking their language.
Yes.
And as we kind of move towards the end of this interview, I want to get your kind of overarching perspective, because one theme has been constant throughout this, and it's the importance of developing those communication skills. From whether it be day one in school, or learning how to do that on your own, selling raincoats, or even trying to just get out there and network. Yeah. It's such an important skill, and it kind of gets brushed over a lot in school. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of where children or where college students and high schoolers can develop these skills and put themselves out there in the midst of their busy days?
Yes, I can. Ask yourself, what's the most uncomfortable thing you can do? Talking to a girl, talking to a group, selling something, working in McDonald's, something that you feel beneath you, or I can't do that.
Yeah.
I just can't do that. That's the thing you have to do. Because if you apply yourself to that challenge, it actually builds your self-esteem dramatically, and your trust in yourself. I can't tell you how overcoming that challenge strengthens your spirit, strengthens your courage to try other challenges. It's good to remember, embarrassment isn't fatal. It's just embarrassment. So if it's busking, singing in public, which I can't stand, that's the thing I've got to do. Yeah. I've danced in front of 30,000 people, but I can't sing in public. So, I think putting yourself, seeking those challenging opportunities and just giving it a try, and then building strength from it.
That's such a great message, and I'm glad we were able to have you on to give that message. Where can the listeners find DanceSport online? Can you just give us a little direction?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's at danceportconfidence.com. That's our URL. And by all means, look me up on LinkedIn or get in touch that way. But,
Yeah. And I encourage the listeners to give it a look as well. School districts, anyone really interested. Gordon obviously has a plethora of experience and knowledge. So overall, thank you for everything.
Absolute pleasure, Sam. Thanks for the chance to speak.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Cheers.